because we were closely following Sai's health, and I got to spend a lot of time with him last 5-6 months, going regularly to his place. We were trying to look at ways in which we can get his reinstated back in college. One thing he was very keen was in terms of how to get back to teaching, and he said essentially at heart I am a teacher. When I first got his call, I was blank. I did not know what would I see. Somebody who has spent 10 years. I hadn't met anyone who has spent 10 years, that too in an under cell. I thought that I will see a very shrunken person, very shaken person. So I was preparing myself, what is that one can speak, what should be the nature of conversation. But when I reached his place, I was quite surprised to see a person who was very fresh, who was very spirited, who was cracking jokes, who was telling me what is the next thing we have to do, who was talking about social issues, who was talking about political issues. I was quite taken aback that 10 years has this made no difference to a person, and what kind of an energy can this be? We often gloss over this, but if you pause and think, somebody spends 10 years with the kind of suffering that Haim had narrated. It must have taken a deep toll, not only on his psyche, on his mental well-being. But when I got to speak to him, he was perfectly in a spirited mood. So one question that I really asked him was, Sai, how did you spend those 10 years in prison? What kept you going, being all by yourself? And many of you may not know that, he taught unlettered tribals in those 10 years. And he told me that 15 of tribals who were completely illiterate, when he started teaching them in the distance education mode, 10 of them became graduates. He said that's what can be more satisfying than that. And I said, how on earth could you do this? Unlettered tribals being taught by 90% physically handicapped person who is himself in deep pain, and they get graduates. They get graduate certificates. He said that they received graduate certificates before they left the prison. I said, how did you do this? How could you? He recollected, he paused for a minute, his own education. That as a child, 5-year-old, he was stuck with this polio. He said it was his mother who insisted that he has to eat. And he said that his mother was a daily wage laborer. She was illiterate. And she used to carry him in her hands, because there was no transport. Food was 2 kilometers away from where he lived. She used to every day carry him physically to the school, physically bring him back for the evening. She used to stay there, bring him back in the home. Quite taken aback. And he said that is the inspiration, Sai says. That's why his mother meant a lot to him. That it was this inspiration that stayed with him all through, and the same inspiration which was behind the way when he began to teach those tribals in those 10-year period in prison. And this, what do you call this? I don't have any better term than to call it politically informed spirituality. This is the spiritual energy. कुछ लोग आजकल दूसरों के घर में जाके पूजा कर रहे हैं religion or spirituality का नाम. If there is anything that is spiritual in this world, it is this. This is nothing short of a spirituality where you can identify with people who you do not know face to face, who you have nothing to do with, who you may not even meet after they have left those jails. But you have that kind of a deep empathy, deep emotional and psychological identification. It is this spiritual political spirituality that really creates fear in those who are ruling dispensation today. It is not science, political, all those ideology, all that exists, but it is this spirituality that really threatens them, that really generates a sense of fear in themselves. पहले उनको बोलना चाहिए हमें कि डरो मत, डरना बंद करो. जो आदमी डरना बंद करेगा वो दूसरों को डराना बंद करेगा. What is it that they fear? They fear this deep ability to empathize, overcoming your own self-identity and self-interest. Where does this come from? It can be a very big question. You know, in course of my personal conversations with Balagopal, he said that for idealism you need innocence. To mean innocence. Innocence is an ability to unconditionally trust other people and be with hope. Trust and hope are things that lead to this kind of an innate, empathy, identification with others. Those who are ill-prepared for this, those who are ill-prepared to learn, those who are ill-prepared to understand, for them, this value does not make sense, it creates fear. आज देश का ये ट्रेजेडी है कि those who people are loving, they have utter contempt for people. They have utter contempt for people. Nothing but contempt. And that contempt comes from this fear, and that fear comes from this inability to empathize with others. If you look at the entire Bhima Goregaon cases, who have they arrested? If you go case by case, individual by individual, you will find only one pattern. These are individuals from different social backgrounds who have transcended those identities. Why did they arrest Anand Teltunde? He is after all not even an activist. He reads and writes. He is a scholar more than an activist. But he is one Dalit scholar who can transcend his Dalit identity and talk about neoliberalism, globalization. He can talk about Muslims, tribals and global affairs. Why did they arrest Umar Khalid? Apart from being a Muslim, he is one Muslim who can talk about universal love. Okay, आप डंडा चलाओगे, हम प्यार से आपसे बात करेंगे. It is this empathy, this universal sense which needs confidence, which needs a social confidence. And it is this social confidence born from political spirituality that really generates a kind of fear. That is what Sai did to this regime. Perhaps many of you would not know that Sai was one of the earliest who did the first report post Gujarat 2002 riots. And it played much bigger role in the political discourse. And one of the things Sai himself shared this felt that one of the reasons he was specifically targeted was perhaps as a revenge to that report that he did in 2002. It is this empathy that we have to now look at, what Nandita was also referring to. Even as we struggle against UAPA, even as we think fascism is in the state, today's situation has gone much beyond. RSS and BJP know this fact that they may not remain in power through electoral dynamics forever in this country. Therefore, they are not going to stop with state fascism. Fascism today in India has become a societal feature. Last 2 days I was in Haryana trying to make sense of the situation of post-elections, that Haryana was perhaps one of the most misgoverned states in the last 10 years, yet BJP manages to come back to power. So I just went there to spend 2 days speaking with cross-section of people from Dalit background, from Jats, women and so on and so forth, and I've come back quite disappointed. The way people are talking in a reckless language about what happened to the wrestlers, the way they are talking in an indifferent manner about sexual harassment, the way they are talking about Agniveers and youth, each section has developed an utter contempt for other sections. In fact, they have developed contempt for their own section. There were Jats who were telling me against Huda, they were saying that Jat kuch hota nahi hai. There is a complete irreverence, complete indifference, insensitivity that society is being pushed into. Each community is being taught to hate others, and hatred has become a social way of being. Therefore, I think our fight does not begin or end with laws like UAP. जो आप सोच रहे थे कि साई एक सोच है, यूएपीए भी एक सोच है आज. ये सिर्फ एक लॉ नहीं है, ये सिर्फ एक स्टेट का मैकेनिज्म नहीं बचा है. ये आरएसएस जो है लोगों के दिल और दिमाग में जो है ये फैसिज्म को बिठा के रखा है. इस लेवल ऑफ indifference I've never seen in my life. I went with some assumption that at least on the wrestlers issue, because even we generally sociologically understand community is based on honor and pride, and women's honor matters a lot to these communities. But what I found on the ground, that even Jats are talking in most reckless manner about this women's sexual harassment. They said, क्यों वो पहले दिन नहीं बोली, वो उंगली पकड़े, हाथ पकड़ने के समय वो क्यों थप्पड़ नहीं मारी, वो 2 साल बाद आके क्यों बता रहे उसके साथ जो हुआ वो भूल जाती, अभी सड़क पे उतर के ये सब नाटक करने की क्या जरूरत है. This is coming from a jack. I think 10 years, 20 years back, people may not have spoken a progressive language, at least they would talk the language of honor. They said that women's honor matters, therefore what happened is wrong. I've not heard a single person saying what happened is grossly wrong. Entire society is mired in a conspiratorial language. आप प्रोटेस्ट करो तो जिहादी हो, आप फार्मर प्रोटेस्ट करो तो आप खालिस्तानी हो, आप स्टूडेंट प्रोटेस्ट करो तो आप माओइस्ट हो, आप दलित प्रोटेस्ट करो तो आप कुछ और हो. This is the language people are speaking voluntarily on the ground. It could be propaganda, it could be WhatsApp, but there is much more than propaganda. There is a social differentiation that the way power is operating the ground has changed. So I think that our real tribute to Sai would be that Sai understood part of this. In my own conversations, he was an extremely intelligent person. We had huge amount of long conversations in course of these last 3 or 4 months. I learnt a lot from him, from his spirit. I think a true tribute to Sai would be that we should give ourselves to fight. This is a very long battle. We are on the losing side, I might say that, because if society starts giving up, even if tomorrow BJP and RSS are not in power, we will have to confront the social psyche of hatred, contempt and fear psychosis that they have successfully managed to do in this 10 years. And that will be our real tribute to Sai. Thank you.